from darkness to light, from confinement to freedom. This is the Reentry Journey Podcast with your host, Cardell Sims, bringing you the powerful stories of those who have walked through prison gates and built meaningful lives beyond them. These aren't just stories of survival. They're testimonies of transformation, second chances, and the human capacity for change. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned on the reentry journey.
All right, man, we are back with another episode of the Reentry Journey. I am your host, Cardell Sims. Before we get started, man, just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that's tuning in, everybody who's been supporting the Reentry Journey from day one, from all the guests to all the network and the organizations and all the people out there that's been tuned in. Without further ado, let's get into today's guest. Today's guest is Mr. Antonio Sadler. He is a product manager at ViaPath Technologies, where his innovative projects are designed to support the incarcerated and their families. A returning citizen, Antonio transformed his life through hard work, education, and faith after serving 10 years in SCDC. His journey from prisoner to product manager fuels his passion for second chance initiatives and tech-driven social impact. Antonio is a proud husband and father of 2 daughters and credits his family's unwavering support to his success. Today, he champions reentry solutions that build stronger communities and brighter futures. Welcome to the Reentry Journey, Mr. Antonio Sadler. Welcome to the Reentry Journey.
Thank you, Cardell. It's nice to meet you.
Oh, man, it's a pleasure having you on as a guest.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
And so I see that your episode title is A Prisoner of Perception. You know, that's kind of intriguing. Can you share what this phase means to you and how it shaped your journey?
For sure. While I was inside, when you're inside, you got a lot more time to think, just because a lot is removed from, the everyday distractions of life. I had a lot of time to really search my soul, and I really was trying to better understand how I keep ending up in this circumstance of being incarcerated. And the third time, it was like, man, and I realized that at the core of it was my perception. It was how I saw myself, and how I saw myself framed my decisions. And it was, some identity issues tied to who my father was. And then growing up in the 90s, I'm not going to make excuses for responding to the stimuli the way I did. I chose a path, but it was in response to negative stimuli in my environment. And it created this bad perception of myself. So I realized to change my identity, to change my circumstances, I needed to change my perception of myself. And I was a prisoner to that process until I changed that perception, until I saw myself differently.
Okay. And a lot of people have a perception about themselves, especially growing up in certain environments. I dealt with that as well. So for the people that's tuning in, majority for the guys that's on the inside who's going to be hearing and watching this podcast, explain that environment.
My growing up in the 90s, and my father was a street person. He was in the streets is the best way to say it. Before he changed his life around the age of 15. And our parents, my mom and dad always told me to do the right thing. And they tried to do the right thing in front of me, but they didn't do that perfectly. And my dad, a lot of his negativity from his lifestyle and his choices was seeping into my identity, how I saw myself, and I'm gearing up myself, to be like my dad. We emulate our role models, and my dad was a tough street person. And that really led to me trying to bolster that part of my life, and negativity and being strong, toxic masculinity is how people will refer to it. But I don't think that's fully my position. I think it was a 90s era street mind frame and street setting that kind of led me into this lifestyle.
Right. Mm. And what was the teenage years like?
I started getting in trouble early on, man. I'll probably say 12 or 13. It started in middle school, and fights and doing bad at school, not turning in assignments. I wasn't particularly disrespectful directly to authority figures. I was more to sneak off and do the wrong thing, and I respect them in their face. I wasn't one of those, but I was more getting in trouble, and it became more street trouble, stealing, fighting, getting into it with different neighborhoods, and that causing issues and bringing in weapons involved from middle school all the way up to the 9th, 10th grade until I finally went to prison in the 9th grade.
Okay. And you've been to prison 3 times. What was the difference between the first 2 times and the 3rd time?
I would say the first time I went through this youthful offender program. It was like a shock boot camp. It was supposed to be like to these intervention programs that they had when you first start getting in trouble, and they'll clean up your record. I got a heavy dose of that stuff initially, and they were really trying to curtail my behavior with that first set. But I came home from that shock boot camp. It was like a 90-day intervention, and it was pretty rough. But then they had me on this extended probation for like 6 years. And, being that young and still being in the streets, you're going to mess that probation up. I did mess it up. Yeah, it just didn't. I mean, and really, I'm grown now, and my mentality has changed, and I recognize now that I could have changed that with my behavior. But I mean, being that young and that much testosterone, I was just making bad choices consistently. But I finally saw the error in my ways on the 3rd sentence. The 2nd sentence was a little lengthier than the 90-day boot camp. It was like 18 months, but it was more at a youthful offender yard. And those yards are different. Those Y yards are kind of really geared towards promoting that young mind frame. and you have to kind of just get in the mix. And if you don't, I felt like if I didn't want to be taken advantage of on those yards, it was a certain way you had to carry yourself. But then stepping into an adult sentence, like facing adult consequences, it was a whole nother ball game. And at that point, now I have kids. I had my first children, and my daughter in 2011. Her sister came the following year, and it was like going into this lifestyle with children. Now, for me, the consequences were real. They were way more real for me, and I started slowing down earlier than I could say some people did.
Right. So like your children, they, in a sense, they became your why. You're like, man, I got kids now. I got to start doing something different.
Yeah, man. And the 3rd time I started getting gray hair in my beard, and I'm seeing officers, and it's just like that age progression that I started noticing, that I went from being, what's up, homeboy, to what's up, big dog, to what's up, unk. And then, when I hit the unk status and they was calling me unk, I realized, I was like, man, that's a status change. I said, what's next? And I look and I see the old man, 50 years old with the cart. That's Pops. I don't want to be Pops. I can't Pops. I got to stop this at unk.
Yeah, most definitely. And I feel you on that, because people always ask me, kind of what was the reason that, did it for me. And that was one of the reasons, like, I didn't want to be 50, 60 years old in prison, right? Because we see them guys while we locked up, even older. And I start seeing guys pass away at old age, and then you start to think about like your health and all that. You definitely don't want to be sick in prison, right? That you definitely don't want to. You're gonna be growing old in prison. That's the wrong place to grow old with that. And so go ahead.
Having some older friends back there and seeing what they went through, man, I definitely agree with you there. the system is not kind to elderly people at all. And I didn't want to do that to myself or my family.
Right. So speaking of the third sentence, you mentioned in the bio and and things, the information you sent over and I was reading over it, you had mentioned maintaining your innocence regarding the armed robberies from which you were convicted. How did you navigate the mental and emotional challenges of serving time for something you maintain you didn't do?
I think the first thing for me was a primary thing. It was having my family support. Like my 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 immediate family, my parents and brothers and sisters, and then my fiance and my daughters. And that, as long as they believed in me, and as long as they were with me at this time, and my family believed in my innocence as well, because some of the time that this stuff happened, I was with them. And but all that being said, once we realized that we couldn't escape it, and I had to either go through a trial situation or accept a plea, my family wanted me to do the path of least risk, is the way to say it. Like, and just accepting the plea and plead no contest, and them standing by me was that path. And it was hard, and I did fight in appeals somewhat, a little bit, but the system is I just had to say, it wasn't geared towards me fighting for my innocence. If I believe, and my family believes, that if we had more money, it might have been a different outcome. If we could have afforded a higher paying attorney, I might not have went to prison at all. But I just had to accept it, and I had to see that there was a higher purpose in it for myself, because I was susceptible to these type of accusations because of my lifestyle. I mean,
Right.
it wasn't like I was just a door-to-door Bible salesman or something my whole life. I was getting in trouble. I mean, some people are more susceptible to these type of accusations to others. So I just had
Exactly.
this, and that comes with the street. When you're out there and you doing that stuff, as they say, it's par for the course. But I just realized that I was no longer willing to accept that, and I just had to remove myself from the streets, man, for real.
Exactly. But I'm glad you spoke on this, or you speaking on this, because a lot of people be asking, there's a percentage, and I think the number is 40. It's 43. It's 40-some%, but I'm willing to say it's 43. 43% of people who are innocent will plead out, and some people are always like, why? But they don't really understand. Like, you really, and when you're in that situation, innocent or not, there you just don't see yourself coming out on top, especially what you got to go through in this
Man,
process of going back and forth. The toll is taken on the family, you know, um, your past weighing in on you, right? And all of
yeah.
these things to where you can't really, I don't really see no win out of this. Um, and so take a plea, and like I said, a lot of people really don't understand that side of it. A lot of people just say, "Well, why? If you're innocent, why would you take a plea?" And I'm like, man, y'all just don't understand, because no matter what, you don't want to take a chance of going to trial, because they always tell you go to trial, we're gonna hit you with the biggest number. That's the biggest fear right there. If you go to trial, and especially whatever the max is of that particular case, and you looking at robbery or anything violent, something like that, so that's a good 20. You know what I'm saying? So that's what they're gonna threaten you. When you go to trial, we're gonna give you this, and
I
then how
mean,
you look, yeah, it's crazy.
the way it feels like it's geared, and I just have to speak to that. It feels like it's geared towards, you know, getting people to plead out, especially if you don't have money. It's a socioeconomic struggle. There's also disparities that I would say, it seems apparent, that maybe based on class or race, it seems that way. But I will also say too, you know, uh, I just had to, when you've been in a county jail 3 years, and that county jail environment is so restrictive. There's
Man,
no,
I already know. I
You
was in
know,
the county jail for 3 years fighting my federal case. So I
yeah.
definitely know that, man.
And then after that long of not touching your family, not being hugged, your kids growing up, it just becomes more and more attractive to just get it out the way so that you can hug them, so that you can see them, so that you can be a part of their life more than you are. And you be willing, you get so desperate to just want to be there with your family and see them, that just having those visits, those contact visits is sometimes worth accepting. And especially if you lose a case and you facing anything over 30 years as a consequence, it just, and I saw people take that risk and lose. And you know, my attorney was a state provided attorney, and I mean, they didn't do things that instilled confidence that they had my best interest in mind. It just and once my mom and my wife, they in tears, they cried and said, just take the plea, we're gonna be there for you. And you know, my dad was elderly and getting sick. I was hoping to be able to see him before he went, and I was. So it was worth it. It was worth it to get in there and go ahead so I can get to a state facility and see my family. And that's sad. That's when you given those type of options, that's what you have to face. But that comes with the streets. That's, you know.
Right, yeah, that come with the territory.
You know,
And so I think what a lot of people really want to know, the leap from incarceration to product manager at a tech company, ViaPath at that, right? To me, that's remarkable. What skills or perspectives from your time that you did on the inside had kind of served you well in the tech industry? Was there something that you like? Did you take any like tech courses or anything on the inside?
for sure, there was a lot of educational based content that I was consuming in that time period, especially the last 5 years of the sentence. I was at a reentry based facility. We had a lot of programs and classes. I became a peer leader in those programs, so I was creating my own content to help guys change their perception of themselves and their perspective on life. And it was successful. It was getting good feedback, and also I was a chaplain's assistant, so I was able to engage with certain technology a little more than other people to help do my job as chaplain's assistant. And over time, I kind of gained the trust of the staff, being an honest person that was just out to try to help the inmates, and uh, and help myself prepare as I was preparing to go home. And I think the things that really aided me the most in this particular field is understanding the inmate problem and understanding the problems that inmates face intimately. Like, I say this, and I say this all the time in my company. Like, we exist because that somebody went to jail, and that person that's in jail is our number one customer, whether we realize that or not. And
Right.
I think that this company is doing a better job, definitely, of treating that person like a customer and treating the people that are connected to that person like customers, and understanding the communication problems that being in a restrictive environment, only having one wall phone, and understanding the pressures that those restrictions put on relationships. And relationships can dissolve, because people aren't able to communicate the way they need to. And I felt that intimately, understood that. And I had to use resilient tactics. I had to kind of, I had to learn how to leverage people to my viewpoint to get them to help me, like case managers and stuff inside that was kind of like becoming advocates and trusting me once I gained trust. And that also, being able to persuade people to your point of view helps in product, or being able to understand a problem and then articulate a solution in a way that instills trust to people. That really helps in product. And then also, solving these problems with technology is so fun. I mean, it's at the point now. I can remember starting this in the 90s, having a tablet in prison. Man, it's like that wasn't going to
Yeah,
happen.
but in the 90s, man, in Missouri in the 90s and the early 2000s, you was doing it if you had a box square TV and a boom box or Walkman.
uh, One of those cheap Family Dollar radios, $3 radios was $50, and that was
Man.
And maybe if you could afford it, you can get they had typewriters, but those
Oh
was like,
yeah, you had to be balling to get a typewriter.
yeah, and those were the guys that were really like fighting the cases that needed that. And
Yeah,
but
man, I
now,
forgot about the typewriters. So how did the connection or relationship begin with ViaPath?
well, one of that facility that I was at, the reentry facility, there was a lady there, warden, Nina Staley. She started a reentry program there, and
I know Nina Staley.
Nina,
She was the program director.
yes, and she was at that facility. She started. I was one of the peer leaders at her facility when they moved her to start that program all throughout SCDC. She still had a lot of leverage over what was going on at the facilities, and she wanted to make sure the guys were still doing the right thing. So, like, you know, me and Nina became one of my mentors, and she was making sure I was doing the right thing and checking behind me. But you know, it was all just in hopes that I'll continue on the right path. And she ended up leaving SCDC to work in the private sector, and ViaPath started a second chance program. And when they asked her for someone that she would recommend for a position like this, she thought of me first. And it shows that, you know, you might feel like when you're in prison, the stuff that you're doing doesn't matter. Like these classes don't matter, these certificates don't matter. You never know what can materialize, what God can use, can bless. It was my behavior and my focus on, you know, my family doing the right thing that she was willing over time to give me a stamp of approval and put her name on me. You say, I vouch for him. And that means that's big. And you know what, her doing that, I've been eternally grateful for that. And it's more instilled in my heart to not ever mess up that stamp of approval. You know, that means something. And, you know,
Yeah, that's big. Because I know her, I met her almost a year ago. I know her through my mentor Andre Norman, but I met her in Tennessee. We all went into this prison in Tennessee last year. We did an assessment, and that's where I met her. I knew of her, but I finally got to meet her in Tennessee. So yeah, that is huge right there. Very huge.
People that's really big on helping, you know, the inmate population, and she's still doing that. You know, she ended up leaving the company and doing other things, but still it's still love always. And anytime that I get to tell the story, I want to let the guys and the women inside know that that stuff that you're doing in there, it matters. People are watching. And you never know where your next opportunity is going to come from. Be the type of person, you know, even in the small things every day where people can instill trust in you, you know.
Most definitely. And as someone who design products for the incarcerated and their families, what insights from your personal experience influence your approach to product development?
You know, one thing for me, and I really try to, the perspective that I come at from for product is, you know, I'm trying to recreate whatever the inmate wants on the outside on the inside. So, you know, if it's something that's similar to home or a product, like you strip the basic things when you go to prison. So I try to use our technology to recreate or reestablish those basic things for an incarcerated customer, you know, and you know, if it reminds you of home or is similar to something that you can have on the streets, then it's popular on the inside. And you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So our tech products having, you know, and then also I think companies like ours could also grow in their understanding too, that they can grow in understanding the right tone and the right words and the right acceptable wrapper to put everything on for the incarcerated customer to feel like it's authentic, like it's something that they would actually send or want to use. So, you know, I get to create, I've created several lines of digital cards called e-cards. That's one of my favorite things to do. And it's just to build on those relationships between the incarcerated person and whoever they're sending the digital card out to that solves a problem for them. They can send that card immediately. You can say happy birthday immediately. And, you know, you don't have to wait on snail mail and the envelope and all of that. And,
Right.
you know, you can receive that in the same way, and I'm trying to get it to where it's more personalized in the future. Also, I'm also looking at ways. I like to help the inmate to feel independent, or the incarcerated customer to feel as much independency and normalcy as they can in using our products. So, anything that they can do for themselves, any product that they can, any problem that they can solve for themselves. And that's kind of something that our products are kind of branching out to. We're thinking about the whole journey of the incarcerated customer, from beginning, from the day of their arrest to the day they go home, and after, helping them with resources for reintegration. It's like, so seeing all of these stages of the incarcerated person and that journey, I know, and I try to solve the problems at each stage, using our technology and doing it economically, where it's affordable for the user.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. So yeah, I definitely agree. Where that's where we built at our academy, that we focus on that reentry begins on the inside. So that's what we focus on. So we try to provide not only just, even though I have programs, but I partner up and collaborate with a lot of other people who can't seem to navigate inside correctional institutions. And they have programs that I feel like is needed and would be impactful and worthwhile. I help them get inside the correctional institutions, because for me, like over at the approach that we take in our academy is we do the whole the whole person approach, or we focus on building an ecosystem around that individual, instead of everyone having these different silos, and you just don't know what is going on with the individual, especially once they get released. A lot of guys, as you know, we take these programs on the inside, but once we're done with the programs, especially when we get released, there's no connections to the people in the program. And so that's one of the biggest things that I do different in my programs, especially, is you automatically get the mentorship, information, everything you get put into the ecosystem when you get released. So once you get released, you're not stuck out here on your own unless you choose to be. And it ain't nothing but a phone number or email, or go to a Facebook and add me as a friend, or anything away, right? But we
Yeah.
focus on 5 different dimensions of the whole person, from the physical to the psychological to the purpose to the social to the economic. And it's a lot of different pieces that play in all of these, but we all have to work together simultaneously.
Yes, for sure. And I think as you were speaking, I was just thinking about the past, man, and a lot of the guys that unfortunately I met that I feel like got lost in the system. Once they left, they didn't have that point of contact. There were some bad stories and there were some good stories. And I just, I try to I try to use the bad stories of the guys that, didn't get that support or didn't reach out for that support as motivation for myself. And to also try to use it as content to advise other people about the dangers of not staying connected once you post release. Because you can kind of, you know, there's a lot of people that go through the system, they become antisocial because of the way the system treats you, or people treat you while you're going through that. But we really need help, especially coming home and getting started. And I can tell you, if it wasn't for my support group that I had, and that's my from my family to my church group to my mentors, people like Nina, other people, I wouldn't have made it this far, because there was always this moment where I could have went the wrong way. I could have made the wrong choice, or the stress could have overwhelmed me and I made the wrong decision. But I had somebody I could call out to, and people that would advise me during those times, and they would lean with me. And just knowing that you have a support group in a community, a tribe, it makes it easier to make the right choice.
Right. And that's crazy you said it, because my next question would be, what would you want people to understand about the role of family connections and support system play in successful reentry?
Yeah, I think that plays the primary role. I mean, you can make it on your own if you have the resolve. Like if a person can make that resolute choice, and I'm not going to break the law, I'm not going to put myself back in these circumstances. And I believe that, if you make that decision, that any human can do that. But I think it's easier when you have family and friends and people who believe in you, people who are willing to leverage their resources and their time to help you. One thing for me, having that support group also gives me something to think about before making a bad decision or pressing a stupid button or realizing I have a mom, a dad, my daughters, my wife, all these people that would be disappointed and hurt and really genuinely feel like they wasted their time if I went in the wrong direction. Not saying I can't make mistakes, but to intentionally do something wrong or stupid, I think that I have my support group is one of the biggest barriers to that.
Okay. Right. Yeah, that is vital to reentry. Somebody made a comment. Having a support group in your corner backing you up is vital to reentry. Um,
For sure.
do you ever get any flack or anything back for working with for working with ViaPath? I mean, companies like ViaPath and these other companies, sometimes they get a bad look from family members of those incarcerated, even those being incarcerated.
Yeah, a little in some of the social media platforms, but nothing, in
Right.
general, and people people want to believe in good stories. People want to see people overcome. People, I believe our country and the world is still genuinely genuinely good in some ways, and we just want to see people overcome. There's haters and there's flack, but I can tell you that coming to work for this company and being here for the last 4 years, I was shocked in some cases what I found, positively shocked and like in a good way. And the dynamics didn't work the way that I thought that they did. There was a lot of business dynamics that played into the decisions that was made, that it's not the way that you might think. And saying that, now I understand better how to serve this community and how to solve the problems that they face from being in the inside. And that's what we need. We need people who've been through this on the inside of these companies, helping guide the decisions so that they truly understand intimately the problems that the people are facing. And in this company, there are people who have family members who are incarcerated and use the services. The Deb Alderson herself, she has a nephew that the CEO, she went into this field because of her family member that went through the system, and she wanted to help them. And I think that's what we need. We need more people coming from this world and in this space, working in this space. And it'll generate more opportunities, and we'll become more effective and efficient at solving the problems and being able to present viable opportunities for the future, second chance opportunities. I mean, when you go to prison, if you try to look at it a positive way, you have, and that's what I had to do. I had to find the best positive way to view those circumstances. I had time where I didn't have to pay bills, where I could completely focus on my personal growth, search my soul. I could exercise. I had time to adjust and grow and learn myself, and then plan and strategize and make sure that I understood who I am and that role in my family. And being at a company like this, and at the time where companies are doing this more and more, there's more resources now for people coming out of prison than ever. I mean, it's stuff going on that I would have never thought was going to happen if you told me, in the 90s, this stuff that's happening.
Straight up.
Degrees while you're in prison, it's like it's changing, and it's changing for the good. And it's because people actually care. People who actually care, they are leveraging their resources to help this population. And I want to see more of it. I want to see more people, because there's guys, if you give them a second chance, third chance, whatever it may be, that they'll surprise you, and they'll become some of the most loyal customers and team members that you could ever. And they have resiliency, and they're creative. There's a lot of talent back there. You know that.
Yeah, most definitely. And and like you said, it first chance, second chance. It took me 5 times. I went to prison 5 times, right, before it all came together. But one thing that I like what you said, and I'm glad you said, because I preach it all the time. And it all coincides with my academy, On the Inside Reentry Academy. I always say, we need more formerly incarcerated educators running programs beside institutions. Not only that, we need more formerly incarcerated people on these boards of these companies or involved with these companies and things like that, because we are the ones that been through it. We truly know like what's on the inside, what are the solutions, because when we in there, that's all we talk about a lot of times, man. You know, man, they need to do this, but they do it this way. And so like we know firsthand. So I definitely agree with you on that. Another question I like to ask is, what strategies have you developed to help others see beyond the prisoner label?
You know, a lot of times, man, when I realized that a lot of the men that were having this perception issue with how they see themselves, and you know, it was because that they were continuing on a legacy that was handed to them, and they were either doing it directly or indirectly in response to what they saw or were taught by their role models. And so it was a lot of, you know, I met a lot of super angry, super violent young dudes that was coming in there for serious gun crimes. And it was like this pattern that I was seeing of these young dudes coming in with these really bad charges. And what I started recognizing is a lot of them had a hole in their father figure. Like there was a void there. Either their dad was in the streets and, you know, they were hurt and angry about it, or they didn't know their dad at all, or their dad just abandoned them. And that anger or that void created a complex identity for themselves, and they living out that identity in anger until somebody helps them in that. And you know, for me, my dad was there, but it was who he was more of him not being there. And then when he changed, it allowed me to see that change, and it created an environment for me where that change was more possible for me. You know, at the end of the day, we all make our own decisions, and we have to live with the consequences of those choices. But I will say that, you know, when you are young and there's nobody that will lead you or guide you, the the culture in our country can produce some messed up young men. You know, there's a lot of media content that can really push a young man in the wrong direction if he's not guided, if he doesn't have somebody there that loves him and is trying to help him with these strong emotions and these helping them to anticipate these time periods of turmoil and conflict. I think that we definitely can do a better job in that. And I also wish that there was some type of program in our high schools that taught young men that was specifically geared towards teaching guys the consequences of the criminal system. Like there was no, you know, when we talked about government in class, U.S. history, you know, the stuff that I learned, that I don't think that would help me as much as if they had told me about the laws in this country and the consequences. And you know, you learn that on the back end once you get arrested.
Right. Yeah, because that definitely didn't get taught about it. Right?
Yes. I think we would benefit teaching our young men about this system and equipping young men of every race and every color, or knowing that this system is out here, that there's laws, and it's, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but once you get in the system as a criminal, it's very difficult and you need help navigating it.
Exactly. What gives you more hope about the future of second chance initiatives in America?
I think the amount of resources that I see, you know, being driven towards this community, finally, companies like ViaPath and taking a personal approach because they have family members and friends in this company that, you know, there's people who work here that actually have family members and friends who are incarcerated. So they're personally involved and they're personally invested in the outcomes. I think having that personal investment is important to continuing the momentum. And so finding more people or people who are impacted by the judicial system to speak up and kind of take more of an active approach. And it, you know, not trying to say that to be a troublemaker, but to help people understand what's available and to help young men and women in this system know that there's options and help out here for them. And there's a whole nother life that you can live. If you decide today, I'm not breaking the law anymore, I'm gonna be a law-abiding citizen, there's a path for you to get a job, take care of yourself. And it can be some struggles, and it's going to be struggles, but I definitely am hopeful now that that path becomes clearer and clearer for everybody that's coming home. Like, second chance is a thing. Reintegration is a thing now. Technology in prison is a thing, and we just need to keep growing and seeing where this goes. Make it to the point where people coming home with degrees and changing their lives. Getting the opportunities because they went into the system. Not saying that we need to be creating opportunities through this system, but it needs to be there when people want to change.
Right. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give to someone currently incarcerated who's struggling to envision the future beyond prison walls?
I would say, as long as you have breath in your lungs, you can change the outcome. You can make it better. Some things that we can't change. When certain things happen, you can't change it. You can't reverse history, unfortunately, but you can rewrite a new future through making better choices. So just start finding small choices that you can make right where you are that will make your life better. If it's exercising a day, if it's reading a book, if it's doing something positive, and start building on that momentum of doing positive things. And over time, that momentum will build, and you'll find yourself rediscovering who you are, things about yourself that you didn't know, talents. You can do more than you think you can. And there's help out here. What I found is, like, once I really started going in this direction, I feel like God really opened up doors and opportunities for me. And it was like over time, things presented themselves, and I was able to go down this path. And now I feel like I want to continue to create these paths for whoever want to come next. The guys that's in there now, it's guys in these companies, women in the company that's thinking about you. There's companies that want to give you an opportunity. You just have to be who you really are. Be that great person that your family is hoping for you to finally become. I had people that were really clinging on to hope that I would become who they really know me to be and get past the troubles. And thank God that I was able to overcome that. So I just want to give those people hope that if I can overcome myself, you can too. And there's more and more resources out here for the people who are really trying to change.
We got a question on one of the viewers. They say, how would you say the various tablet providers can do better on education / vocational resources behind the walls?
If it was one thing that I could say that I would like to see, recently they approved for the incarcerated to get Pell Grants. So you can actually get a Pell Grant while you're inside and help pay for educational path for certificates or some type of program. There's federal money set aside now for people with records to do that. So I would love to see, that turn into guys getting their degrees, 2-year degrees or 4-year degrees, and you have that time that you can dedicate to focus on studying, and then come home with a degree and be taking a resume to a company, within 30 days of coming home. And then I would love to be able to show that on our technology or platforms. This person has been inside taking these classes and doing this, and they followed this educational course, and then they got their degree, and we'll be able to clearly show through our technology that this person is on a course and is a good candidate for them to hire. I would love to see that. I would love to see guys getting Pell Grant, using the Pell Grants and the federal money to take advantage of the educational opportunities that's out there through our technology, through more technology, kiosk tablets. I would even love to see a super secure version of the internet for the incarcerated. Like if we could have a super secure monitored version of the internet, so a person inside can still process an application for a Pell Grant, or they can still get their own, apply for their own Social Security benefits or whatever that we have where you're not cut off from technology and you're not cut off from the internet because you're incarcerated.
Right. I see what you're saying. They kind of like be able to access those in the ecosystem, whether like you said, like from health insurance,
Yeah,
from mental health, being able to access, counselors, therapists, just everything that's involved in their ecosystem, not necessarily be access to the YouTubes and all that, but to be access to these platforms that, should be a part of the ecosystem that's a part of their reentry.
yeah, to help you get something done in preparation for going home and being a return to citizen,
Exactly.
you know. And maybe we could have a little, a positive, education focused content uh, avenue for the incarcerated, where the stuff that's on
True.
there or the content that's on there is geared towards a career path, self-help or mental health, because a lot of people are dealing with drug addiction issues. They're dealing with family issues, unresolved mental health issues that we could help them with through having the right content on a secure version of the internet inside.
Exactly. Right. Most definitely. Well, I know there's a lot of content out there that they can use outside of myself and the other um thousands or so people that I know that's just like me and you who's came out, changed their life around, dedicated their life to this movement, who create programs, content, give out, whether it's from stocks, whether it's to trucking, whether it's from mental health, just a lot of different things. So yeah, it's definitely a content that I can see that movement for it.
And
Um,
then to add to that one more piece, uh, AI is now available, and then we are actually working quietly on some solutions for the incarcerated using AI uh, to help navigate products and services, or to deal with certain issues. We're just trying to come up with more solutions because AI is here.
yeah,
We need guys to be introduced to it because when I came home after the pandemic, everything was different. Like there's no more paper.
everything went digital on you.
Yeah, everything. And it was like waiting in line, going to a place and waiting in line and filling out application. That's more and more a thing of the past. And it might be a
Oh
guy in
yeah,
there done 25, 30 years. And he has had access to the world and technology. We can better prepare those people. And we have everything we need to do that.
right. Yeah, a lot of people I talk to when they ask me what my future and the vision, especially if you talk to me, I always tell them the same thing. Um, if I had unlimited resources, and especially with today's technology and stuff like that, I would combine AI and simulation programs together and create a kind of like a hub inside of prisons where these programs, where like you did 25, 30 years, you able to go to this simulation or virtual reality, interact with AI on a daily basis, to where you seeing outside and you understanding what it's like to go in a restaurant now and self checkout, understanding how the phone works, social media works, and say it's a 60-day program or a 90-day program, you're actually going into like a hub to where you feel like you actually there. The way I say it, you could take a sale and turn it into
Yeah.
my my apologies, man. I went out.
See that?
But what I was saying is that you can take sales and turn them into virtual hubs,
I see what you're saying.
right? Kind of like you got a unit. Like this is what I tell people, and people say, man, you shouldn't give away your ideas, but if I feel like this. I see future of programming stuff on side of prison is, let's say you got a housing unit. Say the top part of the unit is the people that's in the program in this in the housing unit. The bottom cells are made into virtual reality hubs, simulation hubs, as far as like if you want to do CDLs, say you in the program where every day you go into this hub for 4 hours and you practicing on driving, you get in the feel of the life. They make the fiberglass now that's connected where you're able to you can probably put fiberglass on the walls and interact the AI program. You're talking to the AI person because the AI is interactive now when you're looking at Gemini and things like that, to where you can wake up and just got talking to AI. So you combine all these things, and people are waking up in the morning and they in these programs. Say you did 25 years, you just need to learn how to readjust to where society is now. So the program would be designed on certain steps that you have to go through, but you'll be learning it, and what I'm saying, through AI interaction, like those who do job interviews. I know a company like on the tablets in Missouri that when you can do mock interviews, but it's AI generated and you talking back and forth through it, and they feeding off you. I know a sober addiction app that does the same thing as well. So you can create mentors in the sense of these things. So that's where I see it as, where they actually, you can't bring like the vocational side, you can't come in there with Caterpillar dump site, but if Caterpillar got the simulation now, if this is what you're interested in, you can kind of build a course around it that fits in this hub, and then there you go.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great idea, and I think that's that way of thinking. Is really great and conducive towards opportunities being presented for the incarcerated. We really, I think there's an opportunity too for people with records. Uh, it seems, in my opinion, they're more fit for remote job opportunities. They sometimes they're worried about a person with a record. I guess there's a fear of them doing something that they're not supposed to, being violent on site, or maybe stealing from the company. Whatever those fears are, hiring somebody with a record, you know, those fears are mostly dissolved with a remote job opportunity. If you have somebody that's doing like sales calls, or
Mhm.
some type of remote opportunity that they can actually work and provide value to the company. I think we could focus more on helping the second chance people get those type of opportunities, as well as the on-site or traditional jobs. And it just takes money and people investing into these type of programs. They had a similar program, like something like you were saying, with forklifts in South Carolina, and it was guys and it took people donating money. They bought a forklift, and it was on site, and they actually had guys leaving with forklift licenses from that facility and getting real jobs when they left. But it took somebody investing it, building it there on site, and having these reentry focused facilities at prisons. I think every DOC needs to have a reintegration committee, or some part of their internal government needs to be focused towards reintegration, because most of the people who are in prison are coming home at some point. There's more people that's coming home than not, and when those people come home, they're going to be your neighbors. They need job opportunities. I hate that getting a record could really impede on your ability to take care of yourself. I wish that would change completely. But I think more now than ever, there's positive focus on second chance opportunity and second chance uh, circumstances, because we even have like the president. He's a he's a felon. He's a second chance president, if you want to say that. Uh, but I think that I think that it's great to live in this country, because I still have an opportunity. If I put in the hard work and I prove myself, there's a path for me to regain full citizenship. And I think that path needs to be easier and easier as we understand the criminal nature and the problems that people in the criminal justice system face. There's going to be some people who, no matter what you give them, they choose to do the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Got a place for them to go. We got to have
Yeah.
to protect society from those people, because
And they will leave the light on for you.
and they will. But for the people who serious about changing, I want more and more effective. And it really what it bows down to is money. People have more and more money driven towards providing opportunities, effective solutions for people who are reintegrating in society and showing that, you know, if you give people that chance, if you give that type of resource to second chance people in our community, you could increase the success stories. You could help generate more positive success stories and bigger success stories to a point where, you know, I realize that the job I have and what I do, I wouldn't even have these skills had I not went to prison. Now, I'm not saying nobody wants to go to prison to get any skills or job trades. I could have chose a totally different path. I could have went to and got a bachelor's degree for 4 years instead of going to a facility. But because of my lifestyle choices and what happened, there was still a path for me to come out with a positive outcome. You know, the more money that we put towards positive, we can influence these positive outcomes. It's you know, a little resource goes a long way in the system.
Sure does.
You know, I mean, like, just because people are so desperate for hope and they need so just a little bit of help go a long way. I remember in 2021 during the pandemic, and that was the worst time ever to be locked up, was during the pandemic. Cut off the visits, people was getting sick, and, you know, we really didn't know what was happening next. You know, it was just a really stressful time. But during that time, I was inside. ViaPath gave free phone calls nationwide, two 5-minute phone calls to everywhere that they had phones for free. And they did that for, like, I think almost 2 years. And just those free phone calls helped so many guys check on their family that they hadn't heard from. It was so many positive stories. That little bit gave some positive hope in it. And really, it changed the mind frame of those guys inside to where they started believing that there was actually hope. You know, you can get a dark mindset from being back there.
Oh yeah, you definitely can. Something like that, man, boy, that brings the spirits up in the institution. I can see it now. And can you know, a lot of guys, people don't understand. A lot of people that don't get to talk to their families, don't get to make no phone calls. So if you give them that opportunity, man, the spirit goes up into the institution. Man, I just got to talk to them. Man, I ain't talked to them in 10 years, man. It felt, you know what I'm saying? I got to catch up with everybody, you know. Man, people don't understand it.
Right?
Man, that changed the whole spirit inside the institution.
And then also, like, having specific content, like educational or religious content on a tablet, to where you can go in a cell by yourself and really sit down and digest that content. You know, if you're in a classroom setting with other guys, there's always disruptive people in prison who don't care about the program or whatever. Or, you know, I would see some guys literally try to talk guys out of positive change. And I was like, why would you do that? Like,
oh man, you programming?
Yeah, it's like trying to put a negative spin on somebody that's trying to change their life. And I think we should do a better job at separating those people that want to, if that's how you want to do your time, let a person go there and do their time like that. You know, I met some guys, they wanted to be at places where it was turned up, where it was bad, and where it was a lot of things going on. And I met some guys who was like, man, I don't want nothing to do with anything negative. I'm tired of this. I'm ready to change my life. Let's feed them what they're asking for, you know?
Exactly. Most definitely. So this is the final question. I ask everybody that's been on the podcast this question. And it is, if you had one word to describe this journey or the journey that you're on, what would that one word be and why?
If I had to describe it in one word, I would probably say love. I would say love. You know, we all pursuing something out there, something that whether it's, you know, carnal love or spiritual love, like, we all pursuing something, you know. And, you know, some people say they love money and they spend their whole life chasing money. Some people love their family, so they spend their whole life serving their family. Some people say they love God, so they serve God. So whatever you love, you know, that's what you spend your time doing on this planet. Yeah. And I think that we really should investigate what we spend our time doing, because we only have a little bit of time on this planet. And I think we should all spend that time doing what we genuinely love. because when this ride is over, it's over.
That's it. That's it.
No.
Man. Well, Antonio, man, I'd like to thank you for being a guest on the Reentry Journey podcast. Foremost, I want to thank you for the work, and the dedication that we know it takes day in and day out, man, to start developing what you want to be and change your life around and stick to that, even on the hard days, the days where if the old Antonio if I could have handled it, even them days, you stood firm and you continue to stand firm. So, man, I just want to say thank you, and also thank you for being a light for the guys that's on the inside and coming out to say, man, he got out of prison now. He's working with ViaPath. Man, I can go out and become what I want to become or work with who I want to work with. I remember you were saying something kind of about like the sales thing, getting that in those remote positions. It's crazy because my last guest, she got out of prison and got a sales position at Microsoft and ended up becoming getting an award. I forgot what she called, the golden ticket or something like that, being the highest number of sales. And now what she does in her program is go back in and teach people how to, get in them sales skills and stuff like that. So, man, that's crazy that you had said that. But, man, thanks for being a guest on the reentry journey. Thanks for putting in the work. Like I said, you got an amazing story, amazing journey, and you most definitely hit the word on the head, love. I always was taught. I'm a member of the Moorish Science Temple, so we was always taught you got to learn to love instead of hate. And so we definitely understand that love is the highest principle of them all. And so I definitely agree with you on that. But thanks for being a guest. For the guys that's tuning in, you know what I always say, don't let the limitation of your background reduce the height of your potential. And for those of us that's in this field, let's continue to inspire, motivate, and support others. And when I mean others, that means each other, because we're not in competition. We more got to collaborate in order for this thing to continue to grow and impact more lives. This is another episode of the Reentry Journey. I want to thank our guest, Mr. Antonio Sadler, for coming on, sharing this story. I want to thank for those tuning in, asking questions. And until next time, man, y'all stay blessed, be blessed, and remember, like I said, inspire, motivate, and support others. Thank you for tuning in.
From darkness to light, from confinement to freedom, this is the Reentry Journey podcast with your host, Cardell Sims, bringing you the powerful stories of those who have walked through prison gates and built meaningful lives beyond them. These aren't just stories of survival. They're testimonies of transformation, second chances, and the human capacity for change. Join us as we explore the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned on the reentry journey.